Well, welcome to Skills to Pay the Bills and today's segment of JustAskFreeman.com. I'm your host, Freeman Owen Jr., and today we're covering part 2 of our series that our producer, Tia Young, conducted during our absence on creating estate plans for living and long-term care. I'm very privileged to have our returning guest, Attorney William S. Fralin, a nationally known elder law attorney, the founder and shareholder of the estate planning and elder law firm PC in Arlington, Virginia. Attorney Fralin has represented over 7,000 clients throughout the Washington metropolitan area. In addition to the practice area of estate and incapacity planning, the firm practices chronic care advocacy, which incorporates on staff social workers into the life planning process. And we recently learned from Tia that Attorney Fralin will launch his cable television segment under Skills to Pay the Bills right here on Channel 10 very soon. So please welcome Attorney William Bill Fralin. Welcome aboard.
Freeman, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Okay, good to have you here.
Great to be here.
All right, we're going to have a great discussion, folks. Bill, we know that you talked a little bit about asset protection with Tia during the last show.
Absolutely.
All right. I'd like for you to elaborate more on the definition of asset protection with respect to retirement planning.
Well, asset protection, I mean, fortunately, the public is far more cognizant of the need for planning for retirement. But a lot of that planning is anticipating for retirement. And the asset protection planning, which is sort of my specialty, is one of the greatest risks we have. For people over age 50, which includes me, is not the stock market.
Right.
It is, what if I get an unfunded chronic condition? Lou Gehrig's, Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's. What most people don't know is the cost of care for the highest level of care is in excess of $10,000 to $12,000 a month.
Easily.
So even if I followed all the great advice of a very wise financial advisor, if I have this and I haven't planned, then I could lose all of those hard-earned assets.
That's true, yeah.
And thwart all the plans I've made throughout my life. So asset protection planning is really critical. It's very rarely discussed. And in order to be able to do that planning, there's just some basic steps you need to take that are not that difficult, but again, unfortunately, a lot of people fail to do so.
Exactly. You know, there's been, there's a surge in not only skilled care, which is your expertise.
Sure,
okay,
absolutely.
When it comes to living trusts, et cetera, but the cost of health care itself has increased. So we have two big parameters here. Healthcare and increased cost of healthcare.
Correct.
All right. And skilled care or long-term care. And you mentioned the cost. Now, in 2015, there was a study that found that almost 40 million people, about 1 out of 6 adults, had provided unpaid care to another adult during the previous 12 months. Now, excuse me, later on, we're going to talk about the stress and strain of administering.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Not only the cost itself, Bill, but the stress. And there are various steps. You have, let's say, all caregivers, about 38% of them have a high emotional stress. All right.
Absolutely.
And approximately 19%, according to the survey, have physical stress. Now, on the far end of the spectrum, Bill, what do you think about when we talk about the care for Alzheimer's or dementia, when you have those type of patients, how do you coordinate the caregiving cost, or how do you tell your clients, hey, look, your parents or aging parents have reached a stage of dementia or either Alzheimer. How do you break that down cost-wise for the person that is ailing?
Well, what we do is, first off, we describe, because see, frequently people they've never been old, so they've never thought about being old, and or mom or dad's never been old, so they're like, this is a new concept. But I explained to them there's 3 levels of care. The first level is independent. That's you and I. We get up, brush our teeth, go to work.
Exactly.
The second level of care is a relatively new development over the past 30 or 40 years, which is assisted living. And actually, some of them were just started here in the metro area. And these are facilities where I mean a little bit of care to a lot of care. But they are an alternative to the highest level of care, which is called skilled nursing care.
Okay.
And skilled nursing care is the most expensive in metro areas between $10,000 to $12,000 a month. And the criterion is, does Bill require assistance with 2 or more activities of daily living?
Exactly.
Grooming, bathing, eating, toilet, etc.
Right.
Now, I will identify these 3 categories and say there's 3 ways to pay for it. One is what 98% of the public does, which is private pay, which means you just write checks until you're out of money.
Yeah.
Spend down is another word for it.
Right.
The second is long-term care insurance, which is insurance that if you need those 2 activities of daily living, the insurance will pay. The third are entitlements, and there's essentially 3. There's VA, if you're a vet or the spouse of a vet, there's some opportunity there.
Right.
Medicare, under Part A, has a benefit that if you go to the hospital and you stay 3 days, they will pay for up to 100 days of rehabilitative care to get you better. And then the final entitlement is Medicaid, and it's called long-term care Medicaid, and it pays for over 70% of the skilled nursing beds in America.
Yeah, but Bill, where's that other 30% comes from?
The other 30% come from 2 areas. One is private pay, people that are spending down before they go on Medicaid. And the other are people with long-term care insurance. And then the Medicare, so the rehab, that 100 days, the facilities are paid very well for that.
Yeah.
So that is attractive business for them. So they like to rehab because with private pay they make the most. With rehab they do very well. And with Medicaid reimbursement, then that drops down significantly.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's where the payments come from. And see, for most of America, when it costs $10,000 to $12,000 a month, it's not going to take long till the money's gone.
That's right. It evaporates.
And that's why the 70% figure is, it takes an entire country where, unlike this area where people have higher incomes, that their funds are quickly depleted. And again, it comes at a time, and you talked about stress. These big numbers come at a time when someone's not well, they've never not been well. It's a new development, and then for the families, we have you've heard the term sandwich generation, which mean they have kids and a job and they have aging parents.
Right.
I have expanded on that to call it the panini generation, which is a sandwich which just got pressure on both sides.
Yeah.
Because in our more rapid routines in society, it just is almost unbearable, the amount of stress someone can have. And as an advocate for good care, I have told my caregivers, if you burn out on me, if you stress out on me, I can't get the effective care for your loved ones. So we've got to make sure that you take care of yourself in addition to caring for your parents. And that's why working with a team, not carrying it all yourself, is an excellent idea.
Exactly. Now, I know that you had mentioned earlier that we should start early in developing some type of financial and also consider legal help to develop a successful estate plan to preserve your assets. What is a good starting point there?
Well, the earliest you can do a plan is 18 years of age. At that point, you're considered of age of majority. And I've increasingly have 18-year-olds come in, not because they want to, because for the parents to talk to their doctors, to see their grades at college, need to have that authority. So the parents will send them in to get it. And again, and I have people say, well, I'm young, I don't have any money. I said, well, you've got a body.
Right.
And with the two primary documents are a financial power of attorney and a medical power of attorney, which say if I can't make these decisions, I name someone, my parents, my siblings. And by having that, I mean, we don't know. I mean, again, actuarially, we're a good bet.
Exactly.
But again, I tell clients, I said, pick up the Washington Post and opened the obits, and half those people in there did not think that today their picture would be in there.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so it's not a matter of if you're going to need it or not. 100% of us will. We're all mortals. But it's the ultimate procrastination. And again, it caused unnecessary heartache, disunity in families when it's not done.
Exactly.
And also, too, people have a fear that it's a difficult process. It's really not. It's getting information. We'll start with a plan, and we can always tailor it later on. Just say, as life changes, we're going to reflect where we are.
Right.
And so and I frequently, I'd say, after the clients come in for the first meeting, I said, that's the hardest thing you have to do.
Right.
You're going to get drafts, you're going to look through them. And they're like, well, I put it off for so long. And I said, see, it wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
And then once they have them, see, because if you have those documents in place, particularly the financial power of attorney, it allows you to do all the asset protection planning that some of which we talked about last time.
That's right. Yeah.
Which helps you preserve. In every case, when long-term care is required, you can save between 40 to 100% if you have the proper documentation in place to authorize your agent to take steps on your behalf to work under the rules Congress created to preserve those assets for the purpose of getting good care.
Now, I noticed you mentioned that 100%. And that was for married couples, to save 100%. When I looked at that statistic, I said, well, is it possible? And then there was another one at 40%. And I said, well, how is that possible for a married couple to save 100% toward the opportunity to have skilled or long-term care? Bill,
here's how that works. See, long-term Medicare, when a married couple apply, they have a process called deeming of resources. They look at your assets, they look at your spouse's assets, and they deem them together. So, and why that's significant is for everyone else, if you give assets away, there's a 5-year look back. But for married couples, they're not. And so in 1988, Congress put in a rule called the Anti-Impoverishment Statute, which said that the well spouse could keep the house, a car, the contents of a home, and up to $120,000, between $20,000 and $120,000 as a community spouse resource allowance, and their income of the well spouse, and that's all exempt. And so what frequently is done, if I'm not well, we take the house out of my name, put it in my wife Kate's name. The house is exempt. And then we take my resources out of my name, put them in her name. And it's not a penalty because it's between spouses.
That's right.
And then we apply.
Okay.
And so, and again, these rules, most people are not aware of them. Facilities are not going to tell you strategies because they make the most money on private pay. The states are not going to tell you because they don't want the liability. So only an educated financial professional, an elder law attorney are going to be able to tell you that these are the opportunities. Because I've had people come and say, well, my mother's been in a facility for 2 years.
Well, hold that thought. We're going to take a short station break, and then we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm attorney William Fralin with the Estate Planning and Elder Law Firm. And I wanted to just talk to you today about putting together your estate and incapacity plan. The majority of Americans have no plan in place, leaving their families vulnerable to having to access the court system if they fall ill or if they pass away. Getting the basic documents in place, which include the estate planning documents, a will or a trust, or the incapacity planning documents, which are powers of attorney, one for finance, one for health care. Having those basic documents in place is important for everyone from age 18 to 100, because with these documents, you say who is going to act on your behalf, what authority they have, and if you're unable to make decisions, it authorizes them to make decisions for you based on what your wishes are. So it's for your future. And also, too, if you have aging parents, it is critical to at least get the powers of attorney in place so that if they're not well, you can act on their behalf without the need of going to court and going through a guardianship. So The basic planning documents, everyone over 18 should have it. We strongly recommend that you speak with an elder law attorney. Get this put in place for yourself, for your family, particularly for your aging parents, so that the plan will work effectively for them and for you. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thank you for rejoining us as we continue our discussion on creating estate plans for living and long-term care with Attorney Bill Fralin. Bill, in that last segment, we were talking about not only the cost of care,
sure,
but you listed the types where we would get the money, the different components of having the monies to pay for this care. And of course, we talked about the stress and the strain. What I'd like to know is, we also mentioned the fact that we could start as age of majority, 18,
certainly,
to start on developing an estate plan. But there are different components, such as a will,
sure,
okay, your trusts, various beneficiary designations. I know
correct,
that in my work, it's very, very important to have a primary beneficiary, contingent, and even to tertiary.
That's correct.
Could you name 2 POAs that is so critical in our estate planning? Could you name those 2?
If you get no other documents at all, the 2 most important documents, because these take effect, Freeman, while you're alive.
Exactly.
I mean, a will is great, but Freeman's no longer with us. So
right.
The fact is, this is while you're alive. And one is a financial power of attorney, which says, I give someone, my spouse, my adult child, the authority to pay my bills, pay my taxes,
right,
handle my financial affairs for me. This, however, is the most important document because the second part has the asset planning provisions. And there's a lot of estate attorneys that don't know about asset protection planning. They just don't. We got to put the provisions have to include the ability to restructure your assets at a later date and say to transfer them to your spouse and to a trust. And you need to build that authority in before. Because if you fail to do so, we have to go to a court and say, Your Honor, are you okay with me transferring the assets from this person's name to her name so that we can have the state pick up the bill?
Exactly.
I've done that before and had that approved. It's the hard way to do it. It's the expensive way to do it. So by having that critical financial power of attorney, most important document of all, the second behind that is the healthcare power of attorney. And that's 2 parts. The first part is non-terminal. And it simply says if I'm under anesthesia, I can't make a decision. I name my spouse, my child to act on my behalf.
Exactly.
That's pretty straightforward. The second one is called an advanced medical directive. A lot of people refer to as a living will.
Right.
And that's for the terminal conditions. And what the power of attorney says is that in the event 2 doctors who have personally examined me and found me to be in one of 3 conditions, a permanent vegetative state, an irreversible coma, or a terminal condition. That's 2 doctors in writing at the first examination. That's quite a high bar. Then you say, under the terms of the document, that I either do or I do not want artificial life support.
Right.
Everyone over 18 should have that because, again, while they may not have any funds with which they're concerned, they have a body and they have a life. And if they end up in the hospital, having this lets the medical people do what they're supposed to do and have the authority.
Now, Bill, are you saying, just like we have adult children and grandchildren, you're saying that they should also have an advance directive, a pour over will at 18, 20?
Well, the powers of attorney, the financial power of attorney and the medical power of attorney, those are both important documents that I think 18-year-olds should have. And particularly if they're in school and their parents need to, are still, involved in their life.
Still writing the checks, man.
Exactly.
I know what that's like.
To be able to see what your children's grades are and not just take their word for it.
Exactly.
It's worth having the power of attorney. And so, but as you age and as you get closer to the point of a chronic condition, that's where it's far more important to get these power of attorneys. And I frequently speak to a lot of federal employees who are on the verge of retirement. And I said, well, if you haven't done this yourself, you should do this. But more importantly, if you have aging parents, it's better start with them and get at least their powers of attorney.
Right.
Because if they get sick and we talked about the sandwich generation, it's going to fall in your lap. Right. Now, if you have the power of attorney, we can do all the strategies that are available. If not, and they're advanced, we're going to have to go to court and do a guardianship.
Now, you talked about parents, aging parents. Suppose those parents do not cooperate, and you're looking out for their best interest. And no, I don't want to deal with that. How do you overcome that?
One thing is, working with Depression-era people, I've walked in the room, said, we're going to do this, this, and this, and he said, you're going to get out of my house. And I've learned that you have to take the approach, say, would you like to protect the funds you spent a lifetime building? Yes. Would you like to make your own decisions or decide who will make decisions for you, as opposed to a third-party judge who's never met you?
Right.
Inevitably, the answer is yes, I want that. Say, well, if you let me do some basic documents, we can achieve that. And also, too, I tell children, when you approach mom and dad for a power of attorney, saying, look, without this, some lawyer is going to decide for you. It's a far easier approach to say, Mom or Dad, have you made the will? I mean, even though you had the best of intentions, I mean, they're like, I always knew you were a greedy little child. And so, but with these powers of attorney, if those issues arise, we can address all that.
Right.
And it's critical because, see, if they fall ill, we, again, have our authority to say the number I said before, between 40 and 100%, based on whatever the assets happen to be.
Oh, okay. But now, Bill, the cost of elder care, we mentioned at the outset of this show, is skyrocketing. Any other options to reduce the cost of elder care? Most people don't realize that no matter where they are in this situation, they usually still have options available to protect and preserve their assets. You're an expert in that, and you've been doing that successfully. Read your dossier. Just outstanding. So how do we attack these options to reduce cost of elder care?
Well, again, one of the payment sources that I mentioned earlier is long-term care insurance.
That's right.
Now, this is a product that you can get, and there's a lot of varieties now. You can have prepaid. You can have it with a life insurance component. So if you don't use it, which is an objection a lot of people have, that when you pass, there will be a return of funds to your family.
Right.
So long-term care insurance, while the industry has gone through ups and downs, when someone comes in and says, Mom's not well, she had a stroke over the weekend, inevitably my first question is, do you have long-term care? Because if the answer is no, which it frequently is, then I'm back to the two options which we talked about, which is private pay or entitlements.
All right, now.
It's one or the other.
Didn't mean to cut you off there, Bill, but this is important. I'm in the industry, preserving assets.
Sure.
What I've seen is large companies that sort of vacated that product, long-term care, because life expectancies, of course, have extended, and the cost of paying for elder care. Now, when it comes to LTC insurance, you have now life insurance companies that provide annuities in either income doublers.
Sure.
Okay, or you have life insurance that have critical care components.
Sure.
They don't call it long-term care, but they call it, I guess, some type of care with that's a waiver to these policies. And then we have to consider the fact that a lot of people have pre-existing conditions and cannot afford LTC.
That is correct.
That long-term care. So I see a large number of companies that are, I should say insurance companies, are now adding riders to take care of that particular need when it comes to skilled care. Because personally, even I've seen, Bill, that I'm licensed where I can offer long-term care.
Sure.
And we'll have a number of potential clients that are declined because of pre-existing conditions. I've also seen it where the cost of the care, say starting at age 55, and I won't throw a figure out there, but I've seen the premium itself, naturally premium increase at attained age, but I've seen the premium over a 10-year period, say from 65 to 75, literally triple. Well, this is my opinion, I just basically think that you're going to need this skilled care as you age. All righty.
That's
so,
right. There's a
Bill,
high probability.
Yeah. So, Bill, are you using, in the event that client that you have, potential client, are you using long-term care and other resources, or I should say other types of products in order to provide that skilled care to your potential client?
What they've come with, the insurance industry is very creative and always has been. So they've created a lot of new products. They have a relatively new one is paid up insurance, where you can put in $200,000 to $300,000. And if you need long-term care, draw on that. If you don't use it, you get the majority of those funds back.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of hybrids that are out there. And what I tell clients, I said, whether you get long-term care insurance is your decision. Right. But you should all consider it. Get a quote, and if it doesn't make sense, that's fine. But by having researched it, it's just the due diligence that everyone should do to properly plan. If you can't qualify, that's what makes these power attorneys infinitely more important, because we're down to a couple of options, and that's what's going to give us our authority to do so. And I have some people that will intentionally forego long-term care insurance, saying, I am going to plan ahead, and I intend to to utilize the strategies on the entitlements to make sure my care is paid for.
All right.
And which is a viable option, and particularly if you have an uninsurable issue, you don't even have the option of long-term care insurance.
Exactly, you don't. Here's a topic I definitely like to cover.
Sure.
Bill, we need an advocate for elder care and asset protection for retirement years. You know, a lot of folks say go online, get legal forms or whatever, and they think that they're covered. That is, their assets are protected, and then, of course, a lot of their assets are subject to probate.
Correct.
Okay, lawsuits, creditor claims, etc. How do you help these people who need an advocate for elder care and asset protection, especially during the retirement years?
Well, first off, you should get a plan done with a seasoned professional, because I lecture often, and people say, "Oh, we're in Florida. We had this problem. The facility didn't, or doctor didn't do what we were supposed to do." And I always ask them what the lawyer said. They said, "Oh, we didn't have a lawyer." And I said that relationship that you have, that's where you can say, "Look, my wife's not well. What do I do?" Now, on our staff, we have 3 social workers, an RN, and a gerontologist. Because advocacy is the primary criterion as to the level of care you get. If people are involved and people show up and people make known that they're going to be following your care, you will get better care.
Exactly.
And I've gone to subpar facilities and gotten excellent care because we have all those team members who are letting the facility know that we will be watching and we will be insisting on good care.
But Bill, you know what? We could go on. You're a wealth of knowledge. Well, thank you for watching our show today. We hope that you will take seriously the importance of estate and retirement planning for you and your spouse. Don't wait until tomorrow. Start it right now. Now, we're 21 years old today, and take a blink, and now we're 71 years old. We also want to remind you to email me at justaskfreeman.com to get a copy of our free toolkit about all the financial services opportunities that are available to help you pay for your retirement. Thank you again for watching Skills to Pay the Bills in this week's segment of justaskfreeman.com. So we'll see you next week.